my father comes from a long line of samurais, and he comes from the south of Japan, and in a province called Kagoshima. And his now, by the time he was born, the samurais were finished. The guns came in and they were finished. But one of the other brothers that he had was a Zen monk. So that's an interesting connection. And I never realized it at the time, but it must have stuck in my mind when I was a kid. And the connection that I made with my father had, when he came to this country, he had one foot on BC and one foot on the boat, and that's how he was all his life. And he's a terrible man. He was a real bigot. He said, "Don't trust white people." He says, "We're better than the Chinese, and we're better than the Aboriginals and Japanese." That was ingrained in me since I was a child. Now, I constantly rebelled against it. And but later on in life, I finally went to Japan. And I stayed there for a little over a year. I found myself a teacher and went to live with him. And I studied Zen Buddhism for a little over a year. And that was extremely significant, because when I went, I had graduated from architecture. And I had two favorite forms of architecture. One was Japanese, the old Japanese architecture, and the new American architecture. And Mies van der Rohe was my hero. Not Corbusier, not Frank Lloyd Wright, Mies van der Rohe. I appreciated Frank Lloyd Wright, and I think it was a pity that the Germans came over and took over. Mies van der Rohe was a post and lintel man. That's what he explored all his life, and that remains a very, very strong characteristic in a lot of my work. And of course, the Japanese architecture is post and lintel, and so that, from the very beginning of my career, the post and lintel has stayed as a motif in my work, and it continues. I'm 76 years old, and I'm still working with the post and lintel. It reappears constantly in my work. And this is what I call flexible structure. In fact, it's a structure that will do a whole variety of things, etc. Some of it stands on its own, and some of it moves. And that's the basic structure. I guess architecture has always been with me. I always knew that, but I quit architecture after 10 years because I couldn't stand the 9-to-5 regimen. After 10 years in architecture, I finally decided to become a sculptor. And what I got into was it was the period of two things. It was abstract expressionism. Everybody was working in abstract expressionism, but I was drawn towards the minimal. Anyways, I got into the minimal stuff, and I I stayed there for a short period of time, and I moved into. It was still architectural, but it was really something that had developed within myself. And there was one series called uh, Dissection, where I would I would design a piece of sculpture, and it had lines on it, and it had hinges, and when you made the movement, when I turned it on its hinge, it completely transformed into a whole other piece. Um, I did a piece called Reflections, Reflection 1, which was a mirror piece, and it was designed so that you couldn't tell where the mirror was. So one of the things that I was after was to create a piece that existed in two different spaces. One where the mirror became obvious, and another one where uh, it stood in real space. Oh, real space, whatever that is. Um, and then I was gradually pulled toward things Japanese. And then I went to Japan, and it really grabbed me. So I was pulled in two different directions. I was pulled by the Western idea of art and all the current movements that were going on at the time, and traditional Japanese thinking. So I went to a Buddhist, I went and lived in a Buddhist temple. And while I was there, I went to see a lot of different architectural forms from the past. And my favorite piece is in Japan, two favorite pieces. One is the Shinto shrine in a place called Ise. And another one is the rock garden in a place called, and it's called the rock gardens of Ryoanji. Wonderful, beautiful. And then when I came back from Japan, I continued to be influenced by Japanese art, and I did a piece called Passage, which used the Japanese motif and a laser beam, which was the passage through the Japanese motif into the present time. That still troubles me. That piece, I was never able to resolve that piece completely. I mean, I wanted to do one thing, and I ended up doing two other things, and which was using the laser beam and using video within a Japanese setting. And I always had trouble with that piece. I don't know why. Perhaps because it was neither one thing or another, and but now I think it's okay.